Chapter 5, Part 2, Shaping Behavior Through Successive Approximation. In Thorndike's experiments and the puzzle box studies of Guthrie and Horton, animals learned by trial and error. The responses they needed to emit to open the puzzle boxes might have been unusual for them, but they weren't unnatural. Cats explore, and the required responses were all things cats might do as part of the exploration of their environment. In other words, they were already within the cat's behavioral repertoire. However, humans and some other animals do things every day that are outside our natural or species-typical behavioral repertoire. You'd never try to teach someone to drive by giving them the keys to your car and then waiting until they do something quote-unquote correct that you could praise them for. One way to train an individual to do something that they're unlikely to do at random on their own is through the procedure of shaping by successive approximation. Shaping through successive approximation is similar to the classical conditioning process of systematic desensitization in that it involves a sequence of small changes to behavior. In each step, the experimenter selects a behavior that is already occurring and reinforces that behavior. The different steps involve reinforcement of successive approximations of the desired response. For example, this video from Dale Schwartzentruber shows an abridged training session of shaping lever pressing in a rat. Sometimes a green circle will appear. That indicates reinforcement, which was the presentation of a food pellet. Initially, the rat explores the chamber. There's no food reinforcement for any particular behavioral response, but sometimes it approaches the lever. So that response, approaching the lever, is selected as the first step in successive approximation. Now, anytime the rat approaches the lever, the experimenter delivers a food pellet from the hopper. This is a satisfying state of affairs, as Thorndike would say, so approaching the lever is strengthened. It becomes more likely and starts to occur at a high rate. Now that the rat is approaching the lever quite frequently, sometimes it sniffs the lever. Sense of smell is important to rats, so they sniff pretty much everything they come in contact with. Sniffing the lever didn't happen, or it happened very rarely before, because most of the time the rat wasn't close enough to the lever to sniff it. Now that the rat approaches the lever a lot, sometimes it sniffs the lever too. Sniffing the lever is more like pressing it than approaching the lever is, so from now on, the experimental will only deliver food reinforcement if the rat sniffs the lever. Now that lever sniffing is reinforced, it starts happening more often. Note that approaching doesn't stop happening even though it's not explicitly reinforced anymore, because the rat needs to approach the lever in order to sniff it. Also notice that sometimes when the rat sniffs the lever, it also touches it with its paw. Lever touching is more like lever pressing than lever sniffing is. So now that lever sniffing happens a lot and lever touching happens sometimes, lever touching becomes the next target for reinforcement. Now, the experimenter will deliver food when the rat touches the lever. Finally, when lever touching is reinforced, it starts to happen more often. Sometimes in the natural course of touching the lever, the rat puts enough pressure on the lever to actually depress it. The final step in this shaping procedure is to require that the rat press the lever for food to be delivered. In each step, the behavior that was reinforced was something the rat was already doing anyway. As the frequency of the reinforced behavior increased, a new behavior emerged that was a better approximation of the target behavior. A completely novel target response is shaped by successively selecting for reinforcement responses that are better approximations of that target response.